that anyone that's not here that may be tuning in via Facebook or watching on the YouTube can also see our announcements. So we do want to remind you of the Walking Taco Lunch Sunday. And so, I think there's a lot of excitement about this. We're going to see those tacos just walking around, I guess, as we carry them and fill them. That's kind of the idea. So remember that. That's the fifth Sunday, last Sunday of this month. And then we do want to have special prayers for Nita Cheatham and her family and the loss of her niece, and also for Vicki Greening and her brother and all of your family. We do want to have a special prayer for them and lift them up. Is that all the announcements? We're ready to move on. Open your Bibles, okay? And we're going to be looking at Psalm 57 this morning. And the title of our message today is, Lord, Have Mercy. You ever hear that phrase? You ever hear someone say that? Sometimes things happen, and goodness sakes, we just come out with that. Lord, have mercy. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on my soul. I'm sure you've heard that a number of times. So today, we're going to be talking about that, for one thing, God's mercy. And Psalm 57 begins with that thought, basically, Lord, have mercy on us. And we're going to just read, there's just 11 verses, so we're just going to read through these verses. And so, actually, I want to read what you're seeing on the screen here. The title to this psalm, which is also inspired. It is part of the sacred scriptures here. And so the psalm literally begins, to the chief musician, and you'll notice there it's Altaskith, okay? And that's actually not a name, it is a Hebrew word. A miktam of David, when he fled from Saul in the cave. So that gives us the title, the background, the history, the meaning behind the words we're about to read here, okay? So just so you'll know that Altaskith, I can't even say that hardly, literally means it's a plea for God's deliverance from destruction. That's what that word means. Then it says it's a miktam of David. That means it's a written statement. It's like a poem, but it is David's words describing his feeling at this situation. All right, so now let's begin with what many Bibles term as verse 1. David says, Be merciful unto me, O God, be merciful unto me. For my soul trusteth in thee. Yea, in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge until these calamities be overpast. I will cry unto God Most High, unto God that performeth all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save from the reproach of him that would swallow me up. And the scripture says, Selah. And remember, that's kind of a musical pause. Pause. Think about what he just said. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. Verse 4, My soul is among the lions, and I lie even among them that are set on fire, even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. You ever been around anybody that you'd kind of say their tongue is like a sharp sword? Yep. They can cut you. Verse 5, Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. let thy glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, into the midst whereof they are fallen themselves. Selah, again, just think about that last thought there. My heart is fixed, O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise. Every time we come together and we sing and sing praises to God, we are doing what the Scriptures talk about. Verse 8, awake up, my glory, awake, psaltery and harp. I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people. I will sing unto thee among the nations. For thy mercy is great unto the heavens, and thy truth unto the clouds. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. Remember, this is David's words, his capturing his feelings when Saul was chasing him and had chased him into a cave and David was hiding. We talked a little bit in the Bible study beginning the picture of these scriptures. This is actually from 1 Samuel chapter 24. And David becomes an enemy of Saul. Now, I want first of all to talk about the word mercy. Okay? Mercy. Mercy, the word mercy is used hundreds of times in the Old Testament and several times in the New Testament. Actually, when you come to the New Testament, you see the word grace more than mercy, but they have a similar idea. Old Testament talks a lot about mercies. Remember one of our songs this morning, Great is Thy Faithfulness, and in the chorus it talks about His mercies are new every day. That's actually from the book of Lamentations, chapter 3. Jeremiah the prophet made that statement. God's mercies are new every morning. So what is God's mercy? When David said, "Be merciful unto me, O God," and when we talk about, "Lord, have mercy on me," what is God's mercy? God's mercy, I mean, you can use the word grace. It is kind of used that way in the New Testament and even in the Old Testament. You can use the word love or compassion, pity. All of these words describe or are synonyms, whatever you want to call them, to the idea of the word mercy. The word mercy literally means, the Hebrew word mercy literally means to bend over and bow down, and I would get on my knees, but I'm telling you, Dick and John, y'all have to help me up. But it means to bend over, to bow down, reach down to someone and touch them, grab them by the hand and help them up. That's what mercy means. God's mercy is His desire, His inclination, His nature, His very being to reach out to fallen humanity. That's us. To reach out to us and to help us in whatever situation we may be in. Think about that. Now, let's talk about David for just a moment here, okay? Probably David is, outside, and I don't mean this sacrilegiously, I'm just making a statement. Outside of Jesus in the New Testament, David is perhaps the most well-known character of the Bible, and definitely one of the most well-known characters of the Old Testament. Now, there's good things about that, and there's some bad things about that. When you look at the life of David, the life of David starts in about the 16th chapter of 1 Samuel, goes through, in essence, the rest of 1 Samuel, all of the book of 2 Samuel. So there's 16 and what's 16 and 26? It's a whole bunch, isn't it? Somebody good at math. A number, and even into the book of 1 Kings, a couple of chapters there. Probably no other person in the Bible has that many chapters that are devoted to him. He is a significant character. And God uses him to also promise and describe the coming Messiah, the coming Jesus. Now, when you think about David, David was in some ways, in many ways, a very wise person, probably from indications in the Scriptures, a good military man, a good leader. In fact, many books have been written on leadership based on David's leadership ability. David is probably, can be characterized as somebody that God used, obviously, okay? Now, with all of the good things about David, David was a human being. David was part of fallen humanity. You don't have to read very far in the Scriptures to see that he was a human being. He was part of fallen humanity. And so here is this man, yes, a great leader. He becomes the king of Israel. God blesses him. God uses him. But David makes a lot of mistakes. And a lot of his problems that he encounters is because of himself. You know anybody like that? You know anybody that pretty much they create their own misery, create their own problems? And perhaps even you and I, even we sometimes can look in our lives and we can say, well, I'm getting what I deserve. I mean, I created this mess and now, I'm dealing with it. That's part of humanity. And that's where God's mercy steps in. Even though we're fallen humanity, even though, I can't remember what song it was in there today, but it talked about us, our helplessness, us being helpless. Even though we are weak, we are helpless at times, and even though sometimes we create our own misery, God's mercy looks beyond all of that. It is part of His being still, as sinners, for Him to reach down to us to help. What is that? What does that scripture that we all know and that we all quote and probably have since kindergarten age? For God so loved the world, fallen humanity, that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but should have everlasting life. That's mercy. That's God's mercy. That's what David asks for. Now, I want you to see here, I want you to see David's state of mind. If you remember in the Bible study this morning, we talked about that place where David is talking to Jonathan, the son of Saul, and Saul's already tried to kill him 2 or 3 times, and he's at war with him. Now think about this. Here is this man of God that God's going to use, and he is a fugitive. He is running from the law, hiding from the law. Maybe the law wasn't that great at that time, but anyway, he's still a fugitive running and hiding. Okay? So this psalm describes all that he's seeing. And what I started to refer to there, when he's talking to Jonathan and Saul's trying to kill him, he tells Jonathan, there is just a step between me and death. That's how he envisions that. Now, as you read, or as we read these verses of Scriptures, he described the outward situations going on in his life there. He talked about verse 4, my soul is among lions. I feel like there's hungry lions out there trying to devour me. What does the New Testament say about the devil? It says, as a roaring lion, he walks about seeking whom he may devour. All of us have outward circumstances that we're dealing with in our lives. Things that are outside of us and in many cases outside of our control. Just like David. And he describes it, I feel like I'm walking among lions. I lie even among them that are set on fire. There's people burning, trying to hurt me. Talks about the sons of men whose teeth are spears. You ever had anybody try to bite you? Probably not lately. That doesn't happen a lot. But, you know, the Bible talks about people getting angry enough that they gnash at you with their teeth. I have literally seen that happen. That's amazing. Here's some people who are wanting to tear. This is what he's facing. This is what's going on. Now, there's also the inward emotions. You know, we can't hardly get away from what's going on inside of us. We can't many times get away from the situations we're facing. Sometimes we can take our mind off of them. Sometimes we can find a little bit of time to rest at night and sleep. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those that wakes up at 2 or 3 in the morning and then I'm thinking about some of these things. But what's going on inside me? Wow, that's the tough part. You know, that outside's bad enough, but when there's fears within, the Apostle Paul described his situation one time, fightings without and fears within. Oh, man. And David talks about that, his inner emotions and what's going on within him. Verse 4, when he says, my soul is among lions, he's not only describing the outward, but what he's facing inside. That's what's hard to get away from. And that's when sometimes we find ourselves simply crying out, not for justice, not for God to, just do what's right or protect us. We just cry out for mercy. Lord, I need your mercy right now to reach down into here. Here's an interesting statement, and actually J. Vernon McGee made this statement. He said, faith, you see David's faith in these words, but he says, faith does not free us from trial, but it does enable us to triumph over it. Think about that. So, what's going on outside, what's going on inside, our faith in God, and you see that here of David, it won't free us from the trials, but it can enable us to overcome them. Now, he describes what's going on around him. He describes what's going on in his own soul and heart. But he also describes or brings out here his spiritual apprehension, his spiritual his awareness, his vision, how he sees God. Notice in verse 2, and he states this pretty early. He says, here's what I'm facing. I'm hiding from Saul in this cave. I'm a fugitive from the law. He says, I will cry unto God Most High. First of all, his vision of God here. How does he see God? Well, he sees him as exalted. Notice he says in verse 5, Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. He makes that same statement in verse 11. He sees God in control. You know what? It's easy for me to stand up here and say, God is in control. It's a little more of a challenge sitting in that seat right there, whether it's me or you sitting there, facing some outward things, finances, health, family issues, facing some inward fears. It's easy to say God's in control, but then to make that real in my heart and trust that God is in control, that's a little tougher. But that's not all he says. He sees God, exalts him. He sees God in control. But notice the latter part of that statement, verse 2. I will cry unto God Most High, unto God that performeth all things for me. Wow! Now, here's David being chased by Saul all over the country, hiding in a cave from him, not retaliating in any sense. There is this one episode when he's hiding in a cave, and actually Saul comes into that cave and lays down and takes a nap. Boy, I guess it's good to be king. How many of you remember LBJ? Yeah, quite the character, I understand. But anyway, it is said of him that every afternoon he would take a nap. Now, he didn't just lay down on the couch. He would undress, put his pajamas on, and climb into bed and take a nap for a while. I like that, don't you? That's a guy I like. Whatever, Saul lays down in this cave and goes to sleep. David slips up, cuts part of his garment off. His men wanted him to kill him. They said, go ahead. And he didn't. He just does that. Saul gets up, wanders off onto the next hill, and David comes out waving that and say, hey, Saul, I just want you to know I could have killed you, but I didn't. So here is what allowed David, in the midst of all of that, he believed God could perform all things for him. David knew he was to be king. Now, here's the thing, and here's in fact, the Amplified Bible translates that verse like this. He, God, completes my purpose in him, in his plan. Now think about that. God completes your purpose for being here on this earth, your purpose in his plan. Now, at any time, David's life could have been ended. If Saul had caught him, if the men had caught him. But David believed, and David probably said, and you know what? If he does, I deserve it. I haven't done anything to hurt him, but I've done enough. And maybe we feel that way sometimes. But God is going to complete your purpose in his plan. And so David could rest in that. So no matter what's going on around us, no matter what's going on inside of us, the answer, the key, the victory is how we see God. That vision of him and his plan And the fact that whatever His purpose for me is, I'm not done, and nothing is going to stop me or you until He has completed His plan in your life, in my life, His purpose in you, in His plan. Lord, have mercy on me. That's what David said. May we stand.